Welcome viewers. I will be discussing about conflict resolution strategies in this module, and here the learning objective is what is structural conflict, techniques to resolve structural conflict and how structural conflict can be stimulated. Before I discuss about the structural conflict, let me discuss about a case of Chevrolet 4-wire case at General Motors. In the year 1960s, General Motors was one of the most influential company in the world, operating with a highly decentralized management model with more autonomy, freedom given to different divisions. So, this structure allowed autonomy to individual departments and created lack of cohesion across organizations. Each department focused on their own performance. So, dispute began when engineers raised concern about the vehicle's safety. Despite repeated warnings, top management, motivated by the financial pressure, continued with the production and ignored all these warnings. The objections were dismissed, causing a breakdown in trust and communication between departments. This structural conflict, which has emanated due to the rift between departments, is rooted in the clash between safety priorities and financial objectives. The decision to ignore safety concerns damaged General Motors' reputation and resulted due to the organization's inability to address structural conflict. So, we will understand what is structural conflict, the genesis of structural conflict, and what are the various types of conflict. Structural conflict arises from organizations' framework or design rather than the personal disputes arising between the people who are working in different departments. Structural conflict stems from incompatible goals, competition for limited resources available in the organization like land, capital, machinery, manpower, and also role ambiguity. So, the types of conflict can be hierarchical conflict, which occurs due to differences in power or authority, and functional conflict arises because of the differences in the departments and their objectives. And the process conflict is another type which regards how work is to be completed. The interactionist view proposes or posits that conflict is inevitable, it is necessary for innovation, and it should be managed as functional or constructive rather than dysfunctional or destructive, which is detrimental for organizational performance. So, a completely harmonious group becomes static, and if you have groups which are in harmony with each other, they will never come out with innovative ideas, and they become almost static and they are not responsive. So, there is a need to have moderate amount of conflict, and we have to manage them effectively. With respect to this, the focus of this lecture will be how to manage conflict with conflict resolution strategies and also stimulate conflict which is necessary and important for organizational performance. To begin with, we will understand conflict resolution strategies. Organizational conflict can escalate and soar an organization's culture. So, therefore, managing conflict is very important. Organizations must balance the need to have some good amount of conflict without letting to escalate it into bad conflict. So, therefore, there is a need to manage conflict by adopting conflict resolution strategy, and which is planned approach to handle, reduce or resolve conflict in the workplace. Choice of conflict resolution strategy depends on identifying the source of the problem, and the conflict resolution strategy at structural level occurs due to the task interdependence, differences in goals, and due to power differences. The resolution strategies help in resolving the issues or the problems in organization. Conflict resolution strategies are like altering the level of differentiation and integration to change relationship, increase the number of integrating roles, assign top managers to resolve conflict, And because top managers can use power, resolve the conflict or differences between the departments, rethink hierarchy, reporting, relationship, or chain to make sure that there is no loss of control. So, at structural level, the conflict resolution strategies are like superordinate goals, reorganization of roles, resource redistribution, liaison roles and interdepartmental coordination, job rotation, changing rewards and structure, then changing reward structures, and third party consultation and mediation. Superordinate goals like shifting focus from the departmental goals to organization wide goals requires collaboration. Reorganization of roles means clearly defining the roles and responsibilities in order to reduce ambiguity. This may include altering reporting relationships or changing the formal structure to reduce the competition between departments and establishing clear communication channels, clear lines of command. Resource redistribution is addressing conflicts over scarce resources like budget or finance, personnel or the talent working in the organization, equipments or machinery. By expanding the resources or increasing resources or changing the allocation mechanism, the conflict can be reduced. Liaison roles and interdepartmental coordination, creating dedicated roles or dedicated teams to act as bridge between conflicting departments in order to facilitate better communication, coordination between departments and groups working uh, in the organization. Job rotation is another mechanism allocating different responsibilities to people at a certain period of time, moving personnel between departments or shifting them or transferring them from one department to another department in order to improve their understanding, reduce the collision which is occurring due to us versus them mentalities, and it will reduce the friction. Changing reward structures to incentivize team success rather than solely individuals or departmental performance. Third party consultation and mediation is another conflict resolution strategy, bringing the neutral third parties to help restructure the interaction or negotiate a lasting structural solutions. So, let us understand what is superordinate goal and why this has been considered as a conflict resolution technique. Superordinate goal is a common goal which is held by two or more units or conflicting units or departments, that is compelling and very high appealing and cannot be attained by the resources of any single unit separately. So, they join together to achieve organizational objective. A superordinate goal initiates with a definition of a shared goal, and that cannot be attained without the help of both the parties. So, both parties collectively work towards attaining the objective. Superordinate goals are highly valued, unattainable by any one group alone, and commonly sought after. They must supersede other goals that the unit may have individually. It reduces conflict as the disagreeing parties work together in order to achieve the common objective. When conflict has developed from mutually incompatible goals, the use of superordinate goals should increase cooperation, coordination between departments. The cooperative environment grows as effort is directed away from the concern with separate and independent units to recognize that conflicting units are part of a larger group and organization. A synergy starts developing due to collaboration. Common examples is the union management dispute, which arises in the organization due to some kind of like during a organizational change because of the implementation of new rules. In the times of abundance, unions are adamant in their demand, but in case where the organization is facing crisis or the survival of organization is at stake, so there is a serious threat which has occurred due to economic pressure. Unions also help the management to overcome crisis by accepting pay cuts, the measures which have been suggested by the management. So once the crisis is over, demand for higher wages can again resurface. Superordinate goals emphasize on common objectives rather than conflicting sub-goals, and it reduces goal incompatibility and differentiation. Employees at Toyota Motor Sales unit at USA are drumming out their differences in the car company's drum room. Typically, a group of 15 to 50 employees from one department, they bang on various instruments. Most groups soon find a common beat without any guidance or conductor. This example, it exemplifies a situation where individuals from different departments bring out their own ideas or they focus on their own goals. But when they're working under the umbrella of an organization, after interacting with each other for a period of time, they try to synthesize and they understand what is important for the performance of organization is if we have a common objective or we have a superordinate goal. It will reduce differentiation, removes sources of different values and beliefs. In the example, what we have discussed is every individual has his own values, belief, perception, and their own objective or goal to achieve. But when they are working under the umbrella of an organization, the organizational goals dominates. One point of time, it percolates down to the employees' value system and belief so that they start working for the organizational goals. So, moving employees around to different jobs, departments, and regions, other ways to reduce differentiation when the organizations give them a unified or a common dress code and reduce the status differential by giving equal responsibilities, common work experiences. All these are leading towards the shared goals or superordinate goals. These are various ways through which employees can start moving towards a common objective or superordinate goals. Other ways to resolve conflict is reduce task interdependence by dividing shared resources, combine tasks, or using buffers. Increase resources, duplicate resources, clarify rules and procedures. If there is no ambiguity, the rules and procedures are very, very clearly explained and it will clarify resource distribution like change, interdependence. All the rules are very clear and it reduces any conflict. Let us take one example where reducing interdependence between units by creating buffer is another conflict resolution technique when mutual and one-way interdependencies create conflicts. A reduction of interdependence should be considered as a possible solution. Buffer can be one of the conflict resolution strategy, for example, can be introduced to reduce the interdependence. Citing this with an example, if the output of the department X is department Y's input, then Y is dependent on X in that relationship. When X is behind schedule, Y will also look bad. When X is behind schedule, Y will not excuse and Y is also losing its timeline. So, one solution involves creating an inventory of X's output as a buffer. That means you create more in abundance as a buffer, which will help reduce the interdependencies between X and Y. The interdependency of X and Y can be thus reduced. Another conflict resolution strategy can be coordination in order to reduce the interdependence between units. Coordination can be effective in reducing interdependence between units. When there is a inter-unit clash, such as between accounting and engineering department, they appoint an expert from accounting and engineering background to act as a coordinator or a facilitator who speaks the language of both the departments and units, who can understand and coordinate with both the conflicting units and functions as an integrator between these two units. Another strategy to reduce conflict is expansion of available resources. When conflict is due to a resource scarcity because of manpower or equipments or finance, the easier way to resolve conflict is expansion of available resources. The greatest strength of this conflict resolution technique is its ability to allow each conflicting party a victory or win-win situation where both the parties have equal share so that the conflict reduces. Expanding resources as a resolution method is extremely successful because it leaves the conflicting parties satisfied. Limitation of this approach is organizational resources are limited and it is difficult to expand existing resources. Another strategy for conflict resolution is formal authority. The authority that superiors have over the conflicting parties is very important to resolve the conflict. When a conflict develops between sales and production unit of a manufacturing firm, it is referred to immediate executives responsible for each function and who possesses the authority to resolve the differences. Increasing interaction through job rotation. More people interact with each other, they are likely to find common interest to facilitate cooperation. When parties with opposing values are forced to interact regularly, there is a higher probability of conflict. But our point is continued interaction should reduce the conflict, which can be achieved through job rotation or exchange of job roles. Job rotation means one person is working in a particular unit for a certain period of time, need to be shifted to another role in another division. So, in a process, the person learns different methods, different ways of working, and also knows about conditions about departments and units, and also interacts with different individuals working in different departments. So, in a way, the person is gaining experience as well as also getting acclimatized to different departments. Transferring someone to another unit or an adversary unit can cross fertilize or exchange jobs with those in other units and force contact between members. It can facilitate interpersonal relationship, interpersonal interaction between other members who are working in other departments. So, this promotes greater understanding and reduces inter-unit conflict. Another conflict resolution technique is organization-wide evaluation criteria and reward system. If we have separate evaluation and reward criteria, it can lead to conflict. Therefore, management should consider standardizing the performance measures, reward criteria, in order to increase cooperation, harmony between departments and units, which will reduce, it will create harmony within the departments. Additionally, instituting an organization wide profit sharing or bonus plan also reminds employees that organization's prime concern is to encourage effectiveness of the entire system. Like we have discussed, like conflict is detrimental for organization's performance, but a moderate amount of conflict is of course required in order to stimulate innovation, to encourage new ideas. So therefore, we need to also discuss the techniques to stimulate the structural conflict. If a group is homogeneous, where people contribute to the same or similar ideas, that will never be creative or innovative. So, the interactionist view recognizes that conflict may at times be too low or it can be too high. If it is too low, then the group becomes complacent, and if it is too high, this will be detrimental for the organization. When it is too low, managers need to stimulate oppositions to create structural or functional conflict or task related conflict. As we have learned a great deal of how to resolve conflicts, we also need to know about the techniques required to stimulate moderate amount of conflict. So, the following discussion will talk about potential techniques to stimulate structural conflict. So, they have been derived from reviewing the sources of conflict. Managers can manipulate communications, messages and channels in such a way as to stimulate conflict. So, techniques, one such technique is communication. Managers can manipulate communication or the messages and the channels in which the message is being posted in such a way to stimulate some conflict. Ambiguous or threatening messages encourage conflict. Information like a department is to be eliminated or that a layoff is likely to occur will accelerate the intensity of conflict, These kinds of messages can be transmitted through the formal channels or informal channels, and communication can to some extent stimulate structural conflict. The latter includes all loosely knit and ill structured network like informal way of communicating about, say, a department getting eliminated or the layoff to happen. This kind of messages through an informal channel is loosely knit and ill structured network, which is called rumors on or the grapevine, refers to the unsubstantiated communication flowing from the informal channels. By careful selection of the messages to be distributed through grapevine or through informal channels and the individuals who carry them, the manager can increase amount of conflict. For example, before the organization, during that period, the organization has to reduce the staff strength by offering VRS. The term VRS talks about voluntary retirement scheme and which is a negative message. The goal of the organization is to reduce the staff strength. The message can be also passed through an informal communication channel like who can manipulate or who can help, who can pass on the message so that the objective of the organization is met. So, rumors or grapevines refers to unsubstantiated communication following the informal channels. This can purposefully manipulate, receive, and message contents to add, negate, and make ambiguous communications or unclear communications that can be carried by formal means. Like in the present example, as I said, if the VRS has to be implemented, voluntary retirement scheme has to be brought by management, management cannot forcefully do it because this will lead to likely resistance from employees. They select informal channels of communication to pass on the message to the intended audience or the employees through rumors and grapevine. Another technique to stimulate structural conflict is heterogeneity. One way in which to shake up a stagnant unit or a very stable unit is to add one or more individuals whose background, experience, values may vary significantly those currently held by the members of the unit. So, if you add more variety or heterogeneity, then there is likely occurrence of conflict, structural conflict, which because people with diverse experience, background, with demographic diversity can bring in innovation, new ideas, they add more variety. So, the heterogeneity can be synthetic as well as a real way to stimulate structural conflict. The infiltrators may play the role of the proverbial devil's advocate. That means who cite differing views from those who were earlier there in the organizations. They ask questions, they target, criticize, inquire, and resist the homogeneous views of the organizational members. Either way, the status quo has been disturbed by introducing heterogeneous group of people. Another technique to stimulate structural conflict is competition. Management can stimulate conflict by creating competitive situation between units, of course, where the stakes in the competition uh, are zero sum. You can expect the conflict to be that much more intense. For instance, when city fire units compete against each other to win the best firehouse award, this results in generally a more effective firefighting organization. Equipment is kept in top condition, units respond rapidly to alarm, and teamwork is high. Many companies that continually promote sales contests within their sales staff believe that this competition leads to a more effective sales force. Changing the structure by increasing horizontal differentiation can be suggested as an excellent way to create conflict. To summarize or conclude, conflict is a process in which an effort is purposely made by one person or unit to block another that results in frustration in attainment of goals. Conflict can be understood from the perspectives of traditional and interactionist views. Traditional views cite that all conflict is bad. The interactionist view propose conflict as necessary for innovation and change because it brings in diverse perspectives, and a moderate amount of conflict is always good to bring in new thoughts, new ideas. We have discussed various techniques for resolving structural conflict. We discussed about structural conflict and techniques to stimulate structural conflict. Thank you.